Good evening. My name is John Mitchum. I am the chair of the Department of History here at Duquesne University, and it is my distinct pleasure to welcome you to the biennial Duquesne University Vietnam Veterans Symposium. This will show you what an outstanding historian I am. I believe this is our 5th symposium. Is that correct? It's been something along those lines. It is certainly, though, one of the most important and meaningful events that our department puts on every year. It's a highlight of our annual calendar. We see this as an opportunity to do a number of things. First and foremost, to recognize the service to our nation of our Vietnam veterans. But just as importantly for our students and for the community, it's an opportunity to hear their stories, to hear their narratives, to hear their experiences. So before introducing our MC and organizer for the night, I'd like to recognize a few folks. First, I'd like to thank Dean Christine Blair, the Dean of the McAnulty College and Graduate School of Liberal Arts, for her continued support of this event. So thank you, Chris. I'd like to thank Chris Boysenot of the Office for Military and Veteran Students for his sponsorship, but also for all of the work he does on behalf of our veteran and military students here at Duquesne. And I know I see a number of you in the audience, and you know the kind of work I'm talking about. So thank you, Chris. I'd like to thank Sam Candy, administrative assistant in the Department of History, and our sort of event organizer extraordinaire for her work in this event and for the many other events that she helps put on in our department every year. And finally, I'd like to thank the board of directors of the Robert M. Rodriguez Fund, who give out the annual Good Citizenship Award and help to co-sponsor this event every year. And really, we're part of the organization of this from its very inception. So it's always been great to work with this group. And so thank you all for your work on this event. Now I'd like to introduce the organizer of tonight's event. And I suspect for the vast bulk of you, this is not an introduction I need to make, but I will do all the same. Richard Rodriguez, Bob, Mr. Rod, to generations of students, is not just the organizer of this event, he's really the founder of this entire concept, I think, in Pittsburgh. And I know that some of our veterans tonight will talk about not just their experiences during the Vietnam conflict and its aftermath, but also the role of Bob in providing a forum to be able to discuss these types of experiences. Bob taught history for nearly has been teaching history for nearly 50 years. He first started teaching at Chartiers Valley High School in 1974, not long after some of the last American troops were coming home from Vietnam. And he taught at Chartiers Valley till his retirement in 2017, and then decided he wasn't finished. And has been teaching for our department since 1991, which I was just discovered makes him actually the longest serving instructor in the Duquesne University Department of History. The many faces here tonight are a testament of his continued dedication to teaching and his excellence in the classroom space. Bob, as I've said, been a fixture in our department, and not just in our department, but at Duquesne University since the 1960s when he went to school here. I understand all of his kids went to school here. He's been teaching for us since 1991. And one of the classes that he designed, which he's currently teaching right now, and some of the students from that class are here with us tonight, is a history of Vietnam. This symposium developed, at least in part, out of this course and out of this approach to moving beyond lectures, moving beyond readings, moving beyond books and documentaries, and bringing history into the classroom. And in this case, bringing veterans into the classroom in order to share their experiences. One of the very few perks of my job is I get to create my own teaching schedule, and I like to try and organize my evening class, the same night as Bob, so I can get out of class a little bit early and sneak in the back and listen. And just about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I finished up and I sort of snuck in the back of the classroom, and it's 8:30. Most students are already looking forward to whatever they're going to do after class. And in this case, every student is on the edge of their seat. There's not a cell phone or a laptop to be seen, on the edge of their seat, listening to Bob and listening to his guests for the evening. Not an easy task. When I became chair of the department 6 years ago, I asked our outgoing chair, Dr. Jay Dwyer, what do I need to know about this job? And he said 3 things. Don't go over your budget, learn to tell people no, and find a way to keep Bob Rodriguez teaching his Vietnam course. And so I have probably not managed to succeed in the first 2, but I'm delighted that I was able to manage to succeed in the 3rd. Please join me in welcoming Bob Rodriguez.
Thank you, sir. course, thanks to John for that very nice introduction. Good evening and welcome to the 5th Vietnam Symposium at Duquesne University. It has been, the Vietnam Symposium has existed for 26 years in Western Pennsylvania, but only for 6 years here at Duquesne, but ongoing. The Vietnam War ended almost 50 years ago today, April 30th, in fact, 1975. The North Vietnamese Army crashed through the gates of Gia Long Palace and arrested the South Vietnamese president, ending the Vietnam War. That legacy has loomed over American consciousness and foreign policy since that time. Let me give you a narrative. If we go into a foreign war, it will mean 500,000 ground troops. The military will not meet its objectives. The wily enemies will prevail. The terrain is inhospitable, and we will be hated. Sounds a little bit like Afghanistan. And that has hung over us for 50 years, and it's still there. Recent scholarship has characterized the Vietnam War as a very complex phenomenon. On one hand, you had Vietnam trying to decolonize, in other words, to break off from the French Empire. But on the other hand, you had this enmeshed in Cold War politics. The United States was trying to contain communism in South Vietnam and in Southeast Asia overall. And of course, the Soviet Union and Red China were involved in the spread of communism. But what hung over this was the nuclear reality, because it was part of the Cold War. The use of powerful technology by one side, the United States, against a guerrilla force on the other side had some ethical implications as well. The Vietnam War also coincided with domestic turmoil in the United States and a displacement of countless numbers of Vietnamese in Vietnam. I'm going to start today with an 8-minute film clip. Now, this comes from the first most meaningful documentary of the Vietnam conflict. This was published in 1983 by PBS. And it is a 13-part series, pretty extensive. And I know Ken Burns followed up in 2016 with his series as well. Both are good. Both are excellent. But I want to show you this first 8 minutes just to kind of warm us up to tonight's discussion and tonight's topic. So if we could please show that now.
The United States votes $400 million to help that war, we're not voting for a giveaway program. We're voting for the cheapest way that we can prevent the occurrence of something that would be of the most terrible significance to the United States of America, our security.
If we withdrew from Vietnam, the communists would control Vietnam. Pretty soon, Thailand, Cambodia, Laos, Malaya would go.
If this little nation goes down the drain and can't maintain her independence, ask yourself what's going to happen to all the other little nations.
If the United States now were to throw in the towel and come home, and the communists took over South Vietnam, then all over Southeast Asia, all over the Pacific, in the Mideast, in Europe, in the world, the United States would suffer a blow. And peace, because we are the great peacekeeping nation in the world today because of our power, would suffer a blow from which it might not recover.
First, a handful of advisors, then the Marines. Finally, an army of 500,000. That was the Vietnam War. It was an undeclared war, a war without front lines or clear objectives. A war against an elusive enemy. A war.
Speak to me.
Yeah, I'm still alive.
Speak to me. What's your name? Tell me what your name is. Where are you from?
Steve, Seattle, Washington.
Seattle, Washington. It's a good town. Good town, good town. Very good
Go
town.
to sleep, though.
Huh?
Can I go to sleep?
No, don't go to sleep.
We had some precarious situations and we lost some people, but we always won. So to me, we were very successful, you know, but as I think of it now, I don't know what we won. We won a box on a map where the next day we left it and we never came back, maybe.
It was a war that blurred the line between friend and enemy.
Wherever the Americans went, they burned and destroyed and killed. I didn't see any guerrillas being killed, only villagers.
An 8-year-old or a 9-year-old can kill you just as quick as a 25 or a 26-year-old man. Back here in the States, the kids are playing cowboys and Indians. Over there, they've been playing it for real.
It was a war with deep roots, deeper than most Americans knew. Ho Chi Minh and his followers fought for decades against the French, then against the Americans and their South Vietnamese ally.
I always believed in my country. But instead of sending my sons out to defend their country, I sent them out to die.
It was a war that turned South Vietnam inside out. A war that changed the GIs who fought it.
GI, you want Vietnamese cigarette? For a box of Tide, you could get a carton of pre-packed, pre-rolled marijuana cigarettes soaked in opium. For $10, you could get a vial of pure heroin. You could get liquid opium, speed, acid, anything you wanted.
It was the first television war.
What's he got, small arms? Small arms, automatic fire, grenade launcher, and hand grenade.
With uncensored battle reports flashed to the folks at home.
What's the hardest part of it?
Not knowing where they are, that's the worst.
You lost any friends?
Quite a few. We lost one the other day. The whole thing stinks, really.
It was the first war Americans opposed in huge numbers, openly and passionately.
Are you listening, Nixon? Oh, we are saved. Are you listening, Agnew?
The Vietnam War ended when the communists took Saigon. The end of the war left questions and issues that are still unanswered and unresolved.
Well,
it's time that we recognized ours was in truth a noble cause. Let us tell those who fought in that war that we will never again ask young men to fight and possibly die in a war our government is afraid to let them win.
Vietnam, a noble cause, a shameful venture. The questions continue because for America, the Vietnam War is not over. And it is not over for Vietnam. Not for the hundreds of thousands who have fled the communist regime. Not for the millions who remain in a devastated country that is still at war in Cambodia and with China. This television series looks back on a hard chapter in America's history and examines the questions now being asked by more and more Americans. How we got there and what we did there. Two and a half million Americans fought in Vietnam, and 58,000 Americans died there. Why?
Okay, now our objective tonight is not to answer that question why. That would take quite a bit of time to answer the question of why Vietnam. But our focus tonight will be on 6 men who were in Vietnam. They're not written about in a book, and nobody really lectures about them, but they're living history because they walk the walk and the talk. So you'll get a chance tonight to interact with them, hear them. Here's our format. I'm going to ask these 6 men to come up. I'll introduce each one, and then I'm going to open with an opening question, and anyone can respond. And then it starts, because after that it zigzags off of everybody. And that's how our symposium has worked for 26 years. We're going to, if any of you have questions, and raise your hand, Dr. John Mitchum will bring the microphone to you, and rather than save the questions to the end, we're going to take them in the immediacy of the time. Okay, so that if you have a question which pops up at that moment, please raise your hand, and Dr. Mitchum will be there. Okay, let me introduce each of our panelists, and you got to come up here. First, Greg Conley, United States Marines. Greg. Jim Cromie, United States Marines. Jim Roberts, U.S. Army. Randall Richardson, U.S. Army. Curtis Marcus Simmons, Army Airborne. And Jim Woods, Army Airborne. Okay, here is my opening question, and then I'll leave it up to these men to entertain you tonight. Other than pure combat, what were your most difficult experiences in Vietnam?
probably the only one up here that didn't spend a lot of time in Vietnam, or for what it's worth. But I was a combat medic in a lot of different places. You're going to get me started, aren't you, huh? The hardest thing that any of us see is when your friend, your brother, is laying in the ground somewhere and they're bleeding to death. I was the chief of a section in the Army as an evacuation section. Our job was to get them out wherever they were, get them on some mode of transportation, to get them someplace and help them to die easy. The medics that we had were really good at what they do. They feared nothing. They were coming to get you no matter what. But we, in 1965, 4, 3, we weren't prepared to do the things that our medics today can do. They can save your life. We try to help make it comfortable for them to die. It was difficult to see your friend, your brother, die. I mean, I have 2 brothers of my own who have, one died in combat in Vietnam. One died not too long ago as a result of what happened to him, some things that happened to him in the Army. You know, it's a difficult situation. I mean, next 2 weeks I'll be 83 years old, and I've outlasted all of my brothers. A lot of it was due to not so much to Vietnam, but it was. Vietnam played a part in it. It plays a part in anybody who has touched that property. It plays a part in their life. That's when Bob drafted me. And he did. It was important for me to be able to say the things that I've experienced. To be able to say that your best friend, another medic just like you, we had to pick him up, put him in a box, and send him home. It's difficult. It's all yours, Kurt.
Besides combat, the most difficult thing, I think, in Vietnam for me was the environment. I mean, you get off the plane and the heat hits you like a wall. Heat, humidity, the odor, but the environment. I don't think Americans were meant to live in the jungle. I think we visit, but to live in the jungle, it's everything. Everything is feeding on you. I mean, everything. Morning, noon, and night, it's feeding on you, and that was the wake up. There was no way that any of us could have been prepared for that environment. And looking back, that's the most difficult thing for me. Even 18 years old, you survive anything, but the environment, the heat, the bugs, and it was tough. Hard to get used to. Never did get used to it. Never.
Well, being the youngest up here, I would say, like the gentleman said, I'm from Florida, and it get hot. I thought it did anyway, until when I landed in Vietnam. one thing you always say, I'll be glad to leave home, but I was ready to go home. The smell, oh my God. It's, whew, like I said, it was rough. And the baddest part is I enjoyed my birthdays in the state. But I went in at the age of 16. Did AIT basic, they asked for volunteers. I woke up the next morning, I was in Vietnam. They lied to us. They said, well, it's peacetime. For us, it might have been, but not for the Viet Congs. As you've seen in the video, they were still mad, angry, and they were still killing us. But to have my birthday there and to be in a foxhole on my birthday, monsoon season too, whew. And if y'all think it rained here, it rained for days, weeks, and I'm talking about torrential rain. But with God's grace, I'm here. Every now and then, you know, Veteran Day, I think about it. I had a best friend of mine. We both went in together. We was like brothers. His mom said, make sure my son come home. My mom told him the same thing. I made sure he come home, but he came home in a body bag with me. And that's one of the things that bothers me the most. But that was the first thing for me, though.
The most difficult thing for me in Vietnam was leaving the checkpoint. I was a platoon sergeant. That meant that there was 42 people that I was responsible for. And if that's 42 people I'm responsible for, that means that there's 42 families back here in the United States that I'm responsible for. So every time we cleared the checkpoint, there was a fear that someone or somebody's was not going to come back. So that was the most hurtful thing for me. Not so much concern as for me, because I had made a deal with the devil, and that as long as I don't become blind or crippled, we got a deal. Make it quick, make it fast. But the other people that I was responsible for was my main concern.
I come at this in a very different way. You take two men who've been lifelong buddies, run them through basic training AIT, put them on a plane, put them in the same unit, let them fight every battle together, and come home and they experience different wars. It wasn't the same. I was there in '71 as things were winding down. I was not with an American unit. I had a 5-man team. The biggest problem for me, looking back on it, was loneliness. When I was in the field, there was one other American 30 meters behind me with the radio, Sergeant First Class L.J. Turner. He was on his 3rd tour in his 20th year. He stepped on someone's toes and they paid him back by putting him in Vietnam and putting him on a MAT team. The reason he was 30 meters back was if we triggered a booby trap or got into an ambush, he should be out of the kill zone with a working radio to call for help, as long as we were within 11 clicks of help. The loneliness came back is the closest American other than Sergeant Turner was 5 or 6 days walk away. And we were strictly with the Vietnamese. And so unlike a lot of soldiers, I lived with the Vietnamese and I got to know them. I didn't see them as gooks in the wire. And the action I saw was more than I wanted, but believe me, it was nothing compared to what these gentlemen went through. But I saw the Vietnamese take losses. I saw people I knew as Vietnamese die, and there was not much I could do about it. And realizing when you're in the middle of nowhere and there's no one around to talk to, the radio can't reach anyone, the S-3 is overhead every day, maybe if you can get a helicopter to find out if you're still alive. And it just was an incredible feeling of loneliness for the time you were in the field. And like I say, I think about my Vietnamese captain counterpart, the company commander I worked with, and this wasn't the regular army. These were local force militias, poorly trained, poorly equipped. He told me very bluntly, his family fled the north and went to the south because of the political situation. He had been fighting the war for 10 years. I, a green first lieutenant, is going to help him. And he said, you're going to go home someday. And because you're going to go home someday, many of the people that live here and work with you are Viet Cong. And I know that when you leave, if we don't win, I and my family are going to pay a horrible price. And they ran over that camp 2 months after I left. And so I believe that he paid a horrible price. And that's something that's hard to live with.
I like it. He was in the MAG team, Military Advisory Group Vietnam. I was assigned to MAG, and the most horrifying, it was the worst experience I had in Vietnam in regards to feeling safe. Because if you're in a MAG team, you know the ARVN company, Army Republic of Vietnam, they have been infiltrated by the enemy. So that was always a scary situation for me. Questions?
I am going to ask you to speak into the microphone so that not only the individuals in the room can hear, but we are recording this tonight as well, so we want to be able to hear.
Gentlemen, so I'm a veteran myself. I served in Afghanistan, and one of the hardest things I found is how to spend your downtime, if you do get any. So your mind kind of doesn't go crazy thinking about home and all that. You kind of get addicted to the combat, so you have something to do. I was just wondering what you guys did in Vietnam, if you did have downtime.
If we had downtime, I was sleeping. I mean, there's nothing more important, at least for me, was meal from home and sleep. I mean, that's doing field work. You're out there with sweeps and patrols. You're going 16, 18 hours a day. And we didn't carry anything like you guys carried. I mean, you guys carried a lot of stuff, and we thought we were loaded down. But it was sleep for me. If I had some downtime, I was down.
Really, actually, we didn't have downtime. If we did, we slept. I mean, it was just, when I went over, I went to July 1st, and July was safer in Pittsburgh, I think. It was good for, 3 months, and then they sent us up to the DMZ, and things changed. But for the last 9, 10 months I was over there, I can't remember having a minute of downtime. I went on R&R after I had a year over there. If that was downtime, a week in Hong Kong. But then came back, and we were out in the jungle till the last day I was there. They came in with a helicopter and got me and another guy was rotating out. But downtime, like Jimmy said, sleep was unbelievable. I mean, it was just, if you got 2 hours sleep a day, you got a lot. And you had to function at the top of your game a lot of the times, and you're so tired, it was unbelievable.
And sleep wasn't sleep the way you know sleep, even if it was 2 hours. It wasn't REM sleep, rapid eye movement, is the dream state of sleep, okay? So when people ask me, did you sleep in Vietnam? I said, let's talk about, let's define sleep. Was it restful sleep? It sure wasn't REM sleep. That's a fact. So when you say, did you sleep or did you rest or did you nap? Because all of them are different in the sense that what someone might consider sleep. I didn't do any sleeping. I might have done some napping, but I don't remember sleeping in Vietnam.
For me, my team lived in the village. We bunked with the Vietnamese. And so in Vietnam, provinces are like states and districts are like counties. When I reported to the province senior advisor, who was a colonel, he had a sign behind his desk that said, our work week is 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. And I thought that was a little extreme. And it probably was less than it really was. So when we were in the village, and when we were on missions, like they said, it was really incredible. One of us was awake every hour. So at best, you get 6 hours. You had maybe 6 hours, 8 hours when you were not moving. You get to maybe get to sleep, half of that if you call it sleep. When we were in the village, you were worried about what's going to happen to you because, as we said, everything's been infiltrated, so every Viet Cong knows where you're sleeping. They can find your bunk in the dark. And so any little outside noise is going to is going to wake you up. For me, downtime was every now and then I could get a ride on Air America. There was an Air America Airlines run by the CIA. And so you get on Air America ship and get down to Saigon for a day, and the BOQ quarters at MACV Annex had showers that were hot, and they had air conditioning, which was great until you got back on the chopper and went back to the village, which didn't have any air conditioning. So if you had downtime, you paid for it when you went back out.
Yeah, I was a medic. I didn't know what the hell sleep was.
I mean, you go on the patrols, infantry patrols, and it can go beyond boredom. You lose your concentration. It's just boredom until that first shot goes off, and then everything changes. But you can go on patrol, you could walk, and you're sleepwalking just about. And over there, you sleepwalk because of the booby traps in the mines. It takes a heavy toll on any company, platoon. It takes a toll because you just lose your concentration. You can't help it. You're dehydrated. You're walking. You sweat yourself clean every day. I mean, I've said it many times, the hottest I've ever been in my life is in Vietnam. And the coldest I've ever been has been Vietnam. You sleep in that jungle, you wake up in the morning, it's 50 degrees, you're soaking wet. You have jungle utilities on, and you are cold. People are looking for sun, and it's triple canopy a lot of times. There's no sun. You don't know. I mean, hot as I've ever been and the coldest I've ever been that I remember is in Vietnam. You think, what in the world? You're in the jungle and you're shivering. And that's the environment. That is the environment of Southeast Asia.
Is it, she was talking about knowing the Vietnamese. I was over there 13 months. I never spoke a sentence to a Vietnamese. I never saw a glass window. I mean, it's just, we were out in the jungle most of the time, but they were our sworn enemies. I mean, there was, we didn't want to talk to them or anything else. It was just, they had us brainwashed into, they used the word gook, slanai, and all this here. What they tried to do is dehumanize them. They're not people, they're this thing, they're that. And they do a pretty good job of it. They have us, when we kill them, we didn't think of them as humans. It was just, what we had to do.
Well, when we was training the troops, to go into Vietnam, I was an instructor at the 3rd Ranger Company at Fort Benning, Georgia. And we were training the troops to go into Vietnam. We did not permit the troops to call the Vietnamese people referring to the enemy refer to them as Vietnamese. They had to refer to them as gooks. Reason being, well, it done the same thing with the Japanese. If I can get you to see someone as not being human, it's easier for you to kill them. It was a psych thing. So that's what happened with that.
You know, and another, your partner or your friend in the foxhole, that person depends on you. You depend on him. Your life is in his hand. His life is in your hand. If you doze off, Viet Cong might not have to shoot you. He might shoot you. Because you putting his life in danger, especially if you say, all right, you get 30 minutes, I'm gonna stay up. And that's how you have to you take shifts and get a little nap. But like I say, every little, if you hear a cracker in the woods, everybody's alert. Because everybody's life depends on each other. And it was do or die. I mean, one thing I learned when I was there was no race. We all Americans. Wasn't no black, white, we're Americans. I want to go home, I want to make sure you go home. And that's the way it was. And like I say, that was Charlie. That was the Viet Cong. That was the slant eye. And it was he get killed or he gonna kill me. But I'm gonna make sure he get killed. And that's how that's why they told us. And the only way you can get home is you gotta take him out in order to get home and survive with each other. So it was, and I guarantee you, everybody on this panel still right now, it's embedded in them that survival.
Questions?
First, I want to say thank you for your service. But I was going to ask, what is your reason for joining?
We're old, man. You got to speak up.
I got you. What is your reason for joining, if you were able to choose? And why did you choose to pick what field you went into?
Let me address that.
We're all going to answer this one.
You know where the old post office is down here in downtown?
What was the reason did you choose the village you went to?
Well, that was a hot spot. Especially if you came from a family like mine, 4 sons. These were your choices. You go to school, you go to work, you go find a job, or you go to the service. That's the way it was. No ifs, ands, or buts. You ran out of choices when you was partying somewhere you had no business partying, and you got kicked out of school. You know, that is easy. That's how you made a choice. That's how you made a choice. It worked out in a lot of cases. My younger brother, he was 18 months younger than I was. He knew he was going to service, straight up. Me, Mr. Smartass, I'm going to go to school. I went to college, and I was equidistant between Philadelphia, Baltimore, Maryland, Washington, D.C., and New York City. Do you have any idea how many pretty girls are in that stretch of U.S. Route 1? And I tried to see them all. When I went home, when they asked me to leave school, I saw the old man, and he said the choices are still the same. You go back to school soon. You get a job tomorrow. Or you go to the military. All the same. All the same. So, I mean, you don't have a lot of choice. That's who makes the choice for you.
With me, I went to Vietnam early when I went into the service in 1965. And I was in Vietnam in 1966. But back then, there was the draft. You graduated from high school, you had to sign up for the draft. You were going to be drafted most of the time. I pushed the draft. You had a 2-year obligation. My idea was, let me get my 2 years in, and then you can go on with your life, whatever. And the Marine Corps ended up I pushed the draft. I ended up getting a letter from the Marine Corps saying, we have 2-year enlistments now with no reserve meetings. I thought, boy, this is good. You know what I mean? Yeah, oh, yeah. And I joined the Marines, but it was, when I enlisted in the Marine Corps, I had no idea about Vietnam. The 60s were a different time from, especially the first end of the 60s. We had the Pirates win the World Series, beat the Yankees, you know what I mean? Then we had JFK elected a Catholic, you know what I mean? That was the assassination of JFK, the assassin gets assassinated. I had no idea about Vietnam. It was a different time. There was total chaos to me, and we were drinking on the corner. You know, me and Greg, we've been friends that we've known of since we've been 4 years old. We have pictures at birthday party, 4 years old. And it was, and that the neighborhood where I come from, Garfield, it was a middle class, not lower middle class neighborhood, mixed neighborhood, and it was just, was one of them neighborhoods where everybody was ex-servicemen. They were World War II, Korea guys, policemen, firemen, that kind of stuff breeds patriotism, and but that's went into the service. 2-year enlistment with the Marine Corps, you were gone. I mean, there was no that business of you want to volunteer to go to South Vietnam. No, you were gone. 7 months later, I was in Vietnam, but it was because of the commitments of the draft that you pushed the draft, that you want to get your service in 2 years and then go on with your life.
As Jimmy said, the Marine Corps had a better idea for us, and I went in for the 2 years also. But and the whole thing, we were discharged when we were 20. We were home, did a tour in Vietnam, did a tour in the Marine Corps, and we couldn't vote or drink. You know, the voting didn't bother us. But, it was just where we came from, Garfield too. As Jimmy said, it was, you know, cops, firemen, mill workers. That's, you know, and they all had been in Korea, World War II. And they took care of us when we came home. That's, yeah, you hear the bad stories of being spit on and all this stuff. In Garfield, they took care of us. I mean, it was, we got a free membership to the VFW when we got home. They had a parade for us, you know. After it was our own parade. We had it just about, because they had a VFW, I was commander, he was senior vice commander. And we had, in Garfield, it was, you know, to this day, I don't understand these people, yeah, spitting on people and all that there stuff. Because we never left Garfield either. The bars in Garfield and the VFW, that's the only place we ever went. But, it was...
and down the road, he bought a bar. Hallelujah, Hollywood. It was
a lot of fun. It was, yeah, Garfield was, yeah, it was a great place to grow up and stuff. We didn't have no money, but nobody had any money, so you didn't know the difference. You know, it was, actually, he lived 2 doors from me, and then we moved to Broad Street. He moved to the Broad Street, the 2 doors away from me again. That's,
one of them neighborhoods.
Moving together a few days. Yeah.
Well, how I ended up in the military, come from a family of 5 males, and when you were 10 years old, you were told that if you dropped out of high school, you had 1 week to get out of, it was said this way, if you drop out of high school, you have 1 week to get out of my house. You were told that at 10. Everybody was told at 10. So one day I decided to drop out of high school. And there was this window on the side of the house that we always kept unlocked. That is, me and my brothers, so we could sneak in and out of the house. So I come home and crawled in through the window and in the house and sat in the living room. And my mother, who'd done domestic work on Squirrel Hill, came home early. And I was sitting there and she said, I said, Mama, what are you doing home? She said, no, what are you doing home? I said, I dropped out of school. She didn't say anything. She went upstairs. I heard her when she went in her bedroom, changed her clothes, went in the bathroom and washed her hands and came downstairs and started cooking. So her father comes home. She said, it's another long story, but hopefully one day I'll tell you. My birth name is Eli. She says, Eli dropped out of school. He didn't say anything. He went on about his business. So the next morning, I went down to the old post office. That's where the recruit station was.
Been there.
And I told the recruiter that I wanted to join the Army. He said, okay, we're gonna give you a test in about an hour. Took the test, and I passed it. I said, when can I leave? I said, I need to leave today. He said, well, we're not shipping anyone out today. I said, I need to leave today. I was concerned about who and when they were shipping. I need to leave today. I said, I can't go back there. He said, where's there? I said, to the house. I didn't even call it home. I said, to the house. So I had my little ditty bag with me, clean socks and clean underwear, my toothbrush, toothpaste. He said, I'll tell you what. He said, we'll put you up at the Y. The YMCA was on Wood Street. You know where that's at, Jim? And he said, okay. So he said, we're gonna ship some of you guys out tomorrow. So he put me up at the Y. They gave me some meals. And the next day they put me on the train. And I ended up at Fort Knox, Kentucky. That's how I ended up in the military. And the thing about the home environment where I was living at, it was so dysfunctional. And I realized at about 15 years old, wasn't nothing happening. My father was a batterer. I wasn't growing, I was just there. And I needed a place to grow. In the military, when I went in the military, it was the perfect place for me. It was the perfect place for me. I was going to stay 20, but Vietnam only let me stay 10 and a half. And I was talking to one of the guys one day because after that, they sent me to Fort Hood, Texas for basic and AIT. And he said, hey man, you staying there? And I said, why you ask me that? He said, I'm getting out. I said, why would I leave? They gave me new clothes. They gave me 2 pair of boots and a pair of shoes. I got a bunk to sleep in, and I'm eating, and they paying me. So why would I leave? It's so. And it was a joint, and on top of that, I got $55 extra for joining signing up for airborne jump school, didn't we, Jim?
Yes, we did.
$55 was a lot of extra money back then. So you figure back then, because next week this time, I would have turned 84 years old. So, and like Jim said, there wasn't too many places for you to venture off into, especially if you come from a poor family. The meal the military, really. Because college was so far-fetched, you probably didn't even know how to spell the word university. So that was what my oldest brother went in the military. And he kind of said, if you don't go airborne, don't come back home. Because he was in 87th Airborne. But that's how, to answer your question, that's how I ended up in the military. And I still think it's a good place for young men today. They want to shoot guns and all that stuff on the street. I know where to take them. You want to shoot some guns? It don't feel so good when somebody's shooting back at you. Yeah. Put them in a truck. Put them on a train. All of them.
I come at this from a different point of view. I'm an Air Force brat. I changed schools 9 times the first 9 years I went to school. My grandfather was a veteran of the Spanish-American War, although he claims he was still on the boat in the harbor when they ended the war. My father joined the Army the year before Pearl Harbor and spent 20 years in. And so it was kind of just where it was. I had 4 years of college. Don't throw anything. I went to WVU. It was interesting. Every time grades came out, the line at the registrar's office of young men begging to not be suspended and get drafted was wrapping around the block, and they were rehearsing their speeches on how they were going to convince the registrar, Stanley Harris, most hated man on campus. And it didn't work. So I had 4 years there. I taught at Farmington High School in Farmington, West Virginia for a year. And I'd been wrestling with the idea. My thinking was, if young men my age are being tasked to go serve, why am I sitting out here nice and safe? And so it just was my decision and my frame of mind that I owed the country the debt of service. And for what appears to be total idiocy now, I decided if I was going to go, I was going to go infantry. So I went to the AFE station in Fairmont, and I said, I'd like to sign up. And so the recruiter sitting there, he says, okay, son, he says, you got to pick 3 choices, make the third one a combat arm, but the first 2 should be something else. So I wrote down infantry, armor, and artillery. And he said, son, you don't realize, you make the third one. I said, no, that's what I want. He said, well, what are you doing now? I said, I'm a school teacher. He says, you got to deferment? I said, yeah. And so he looks at me, he says, you need to talk to someone on Thursday. Would you come back? And so the guy I had to talk to on Thursday was a psychiatrist. I had to convince him I was not crazy. And so I also volunteered for OCS. And so infantry OCS was just like volunteering for Vietnam. But it was just a debt I felt I owed the country. I wasn't saving the world from communism. That was not it. By 71, most of us knew this was not going to come out well. And we were just trying to do the best we could for the people we were with, which in my case were the Vietnamese. Trying to keep as many of them as alive. I wanted to keep Sergeant Turner alive to get him home. And just hopefully it would turn out different. But it was just something I felt I owed the country. And I'm fortunate. I mean, I have one dream, which is not a nightmare, which hasn't reoccurred recently. And a few things are bothersome. I agree as far as that's concerned. I don't like really hot, humid weather for some strange reason. But it was a very different position for me. And this, I guess it's a sad thing. I don't view it as sad. Is faced with that same situation, I'd do it again. And I don't know why, but that's just the way I feel.
He mentioned something about the gentleman there, about helping the Vietnamese people. Well, Vietnam was not me or Jim's first combat experience. We were in Dominican Republic with the 82nd Airborne Division. I was back in 65, Jim?
Yeah, 60, well, I was there I got there in 9 months I was there 9 months, I got there in March, this time in 1965.
Yeah. That's when the 82nd Airborne Division flew into Dominican Republic to deal with a matter down there. At that time, I was 21 years old, I'd been brainwashed real good. I mean, they really got to me when I went in the military.
Airborne Ranger.
Oh, man, you airborne ranger. You can kick 5 other dudes' butt. You're doing all by yourself. Don't worry about it. They really brainwashed me. And but when I went to Vietnam at 26, I was an old head for Vietnam. At 26 years old, that was old to go into Vietnam. I had been in the military for 8 years. And my mindset was different. The brainwashing was over and done with. My mindset was that you have 42 men here. Your responsibility, listen to all the goob-gob, all that stuff they're talking. My mindset is to get them, all of them back home alive. And that was my mission. Nothing else. We were sitting in the CP tent and get mission orders, and I would hear it, of course, platoon sergeant, you gotta do what you gotta do. You gotta listen to that, but in the forefront of my mind was when we left that checkpoint, was to bring all of those men back through that checkpoint alive. And we will be out on search and destroy, and we will see a small, or the point man was, Sarge, there they are. Let's get them. I said, oh, hell no. Not today. Everybody get down, hunker down, shut up. No movement. We would radio in their position, and I used to tell the guys, man, that's a little puppy dog. If we start messing with them, chasing them, then the rock wilder's gonna come out. So, and they used to set you up like that. They would send out somebody, you spot them, you chase them, and the next thing you know, you up to your knees in shit, excuse me. So that was the two different mindsets for me from Dominican Republic to Vietnam.
And follow up on some of the things he said, we had an aid station that was exposed to everything. We had a jail cell.
Give him the
We had a jail. Oh, yeah, I forgot you guys were back there. But we had a we had a jail, and our operating rooms were in the front where the judge and all those guys were, and we lived in the cells out front. And one of the neighbors, his little boy, his grandson, decided he was going to be an American soldier. And he lived pretty much all the time with us in the jail. His mother came and made curtains for all the cells so we'd have some semblance of privacy. The grandfather was a printer who ran his own printing business. And he gave me cards, and I used to have them for a long time, but that's been a long time ago. But the biggest battle in the Dominican crisis was right over our heads, right underneath, right on top of the Duarte Bridge. And I had a couple of hot dog medics that wanted to go up and see what Curtis and the boys were doing up on top of the bridge. Whether it was Curtis or not, I don't know. But I think not. I think he was already sold out or back in school or somewhere else. But we had people coming, getting shot on a bridge, and we had to go and fish them out of the water. You got to keep in mind, we had an aid station in a public area, and we treated anybody. If you came, if you were a civilian and you were hurt, if your children were hurt, or whatever the case may be, if you were getting ready to have a baby, we delivered babies. All right, whatever transpired, we were part of the neighborhood now. They're fighting a war. over the top. So we got them too. So it was a different scenario, but it's still a war. And when you look at your buddy, like I said before, when you look at your buddy and he's got a bullet in his shoulder, he's got a bullet in his stomach, and you know he's going to die, all you can do is make it easy for him to die. Any place that they were shooting, and I kind of feel sorry for everybody in major cities in the United States right now that are having all the problems with little knuckleheads carrying guns. It's just another kind of war. And we are living in a time when our people of power, they can't resist. Before I get political, they can't resist, and they haven't been able to resist for my 80 years of living on this planet. They have not been able to exist without fighting your damn neighbor. No reason for that.
Question.
Oh, I just want to tell everyone. This was just a question for the medic. I wondered how, it sounded like you were in combat and you were a medic?
I'm sorry?
Were you in combat and a medic?
Yes, a combat
And
medic.
did you choose to be a medic? And who did you work with?
I chose to be a medic and I chose to be a paratrooper. Yes, I did. And at that was a time when they had, it was a term, conscientious objectors. A lot of conscientious objectors were medics. They decided to be medics of their own volition. Well, I might have been one of the first arms-carrying medics because I was serious. When you take this pin off, you become an infantryman. Okay? You're a soldier. But yes, I was a medic, and I wasn't supposed to, but I'd shoot you. Straight up. Yes, sir. You had another question.
Gentlemen, thanks for being here. So last year, I was deployed over in Africa. My unit we were split up between Djibouti, Somalia, and Kenya. And we had two jobs. You'd either be in a guard tower, just keeping your head on a swivel, or you'd be at the gate checking IDs and letting people in and out. And the whole time we were there, not really much happened, and a lot of the young guys especially were saying, man, I wish something would happen. You know, everybody wanted a combat infantry badge. Everybody wanted to be, you know, the cool guy who actually got into a firefight, and nothing happened. And then we came home, and as a result, a lot of the guys that we were serving with, they all kind of said the same thing, that they don't really feel like they accomplished anything. You know, a lot of guys, like, we came home and then some representatives from the VFW came to us and they said, hey, you're combat veterans now, like, join the VFW, American Legion, things like that. And a lot of the young troops, they're saying, like, they don't know if they've felt like they earned the title of veteran. So I guess my question to you is, what do you say to young service members who come home and they never got shot at, they never got any action, but they don't feel like they actually earned the title of veteran? What do you say to them?
Let me take that first.
Okay.
When you raised your hand and took the oath, you became a veteran.
Exactly.
No one can take that away from you. Be thankful you didn't get shot at. It's not something you want to live with.
Well, I was just saying, as a young man, I felt what they felt. Until you get on that ground, and like the gentleman said, till that bullet passed by you, and you look over and your partner is gone, which was my best friend, reality comes in. And the first thing, excuse my friend, said, what the hell I done got myself into? But now you got to put your big boy drawers on. Now all that training you got, and them older guys that's been there, you got to listen to what they got to say. They'll tell you, you listen to me, you'll go home. So tell them, don't waste that. Be careful what you ask for.
Yeah, because
You just might get it.
What they don't realize is that taking a human life is going to change you. I don't care for what reason you take it. It could be a fight in the street. It could be someone shooting at you in combat. For whatever reason, whatever you take in human life is going to change your psyche because it's not God's will. It's not the spiritual will. Now, people say, what? They were shooting at you and you have to shoot back, and yeah, that's all good. I got post-traumatic stress disorder. It's been 50 years. Not as often as used to. I still have dreams. I still feel guilt. I even feel guilt about killing the enemy because it's interfered with my spirituality. And I was telling Bob and Jim this already before, when my wife and I start sleeping together, that means we were sleeping together before we got married. Anyway.
Got a lot of young people in here.
They might be sleeping together too. Anyway, we got this big California king-size bed. It's huge. We got this big comforter that goes over it. And she told her mother, she said, Mom, I was so frightened, I didn't know what to do. I was really, she said, Curtis stood up in the bed, picked the comforter up and raised it up in the air and said, I'll kill all you so-and-sos. And I encourage combat veterans, said this before, to talk about their combat experience with the person they sleep with. They need to know that they're not in harm's way. And it's thanks to Bob, 20-something years later, that I'm talking about Vietnam. I never talked about Vietnam until Bob started the symposium. We worked together.
I was getting ready to say.
We never talked about Vietnam. My best friend, that used to work for Jim, he worked for the state, name is Al Robinson, moved up to Erie, PA.
We would be drinking together. It would never, ever
Vietnam would never come up. And me and Al was friends for over 65 years. And we never talked about Vietnam. He's closer to me than any of my biological brothers. We never talked about Vietnam.
We did.
We did. We did.
We did. We had a group from our neighborhood, Vietnam veterans, and we would meet at the bar and tell a bunch of lies. If one of the stories, this is a true story, we were telling war stories amongst us, and a guy that was sitting there, he couldn't get involved because he wasn't in the service. He went and joined the Navy and became a medic and was with the Vietnam combat. Because we said his name was Corky Smith. And he said, what? He said, I couldn't get into conversation with you yo-yos. And that's what no, there was something wrong with him.
We never.
The thing about it is, and what none of us recognized or realized until much, much later, is that if you spit it out, it's gone. And it took us, how long? 27 years?
26 years. We've been doing this for 26 years.
And the thing about it, yeah, some of us got drafted into this. But we would go, Al, Curtis and I would go to any one of those 3 bars that are no longer there anymore down in, I don't want to tell you where we were, but we'd be at the bar, and Al doesn't drink, and he finally tapped me and Curtis on the shoulder. It's time to go. Time for us to go. It's a good thing. It's a good thing that Al didn't drink. You know, but we never, not one word ever came out
about Vietnam
or any combat situation.
And I worked for the VA, retired from the VA with 20-something years as a readjustment counseling therapist. And what was my job? To help combat Vietnam veterans like myself
Get rehabilitated.
to deal with the
My job was to help
PTSD,
vets, period.
deal with the family, marital counseling, employment, addictions, et cetera, and still didn't talk about Vietnam.
Well, when I came home, you know, to tell the young fellas this, when we got to the States for 3.5 months, we had us holding and we had to talk to a psychiatrist. They had us to talk about our experience. And after I got back in civilian life, my mom, I had uncles and stuff that was in the military. And unfortunately, I can brag. None of them went to jump school. I did. I went to Pathfinder school. I had a lieutenant colonel. I had a full bird colonel, and one of my uncles was a one-star. But I could brag. You may outrank me, but you ain't got this. But anyway, I've been married to this young lady here for 7 years, and she's the first woman outside my family that I told everything about in Vietnam. And I broke down and cried. I had to get it out. She meant that much to me so that I wouldn't do things like I did at night, jumping up and, you know, sometimes I couldn't sleep for 2 days.
Part of the healing.
Yeah.
You got you
But
got to recognize it. You
she
gotta
understood
deal
a
with
lot
it,
of stuff I went through,
and you got to cry about it if you have to.
a lot of stuff. And to get it out, that's why I say, be careful what they ask for. Because you get it, and you don't, I mean, that's like saying, I want to be rich. You don't know what that man did to get to be rich. You got to walk his shoes. And some of the shoes ain't good. They ain't good.
They won't fit.
They too tight.
Too tight.
And some people break under pressure. I had
They're
a
just too
friend of
tight.
mine that came home and he killed himself. Couldn't take it. He just didn't talk about it. But he hold all that into him until he just, you know.
Well, we know that for a fact. That when veterans start buying shadow boxes and displaying their medals and ribbons and finding their stuff in their foot locker and digging it out, that's part of the healing process. We know at that time that they're starting to heal.
And I tell you, sometimes family members, sometimes you need to sit down and just say, tell me about what happened. Even if you don't want to know, let them talk about it, you know.
And everything doesn't, everything
Do not need a response.
Don't need a response.
Yeah.
Just need a listening ear.
Yeah. Because, you know, I had some of my cousins who said, man, I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear that. That's a bunch of lies. You didn't do that. That's TV. But my uncle said, listen to what I'm saying. And sometimes family can shut you down, you know. But when somebody's talking about it, listen. Some of it might be gruesome. You might not, you know, you might not want to hear it. But that's what he lived through.
Question?
Hi, I was just wondering, what were your views going into Vietnam, and then following, what were your views leading to leaving Vietnam, especially with the harsh views of the public? Yeah.
Like returning back home and dealing with some of the views of the American public about the war.
I took a guy, I went to pick up a guy in the airport in 1966. And I remember this only because I got a phone call, and he said, take an overcoat with you. Now I'm out, all right? This kid is coming home. He caught hell on the plane. I met him at the gate with an overcoat so he could hide his uniform. And it is the most difficult, one of the most difficult things that I ever had to do. Protect you from your own. Not cool.
I felt like I was coming to a country that I didn't know. Because, I mean,
That's right.
even though, like you said, the airport, you had people saying, there one of them, there go one of them, they go, you a baby killer, you did this, y'all did this, you know, And at one point, I cussed a lady out one time, and I said, well, ma'am, if it wasn't for me, you wouldn't be living free, because I fought for this country.
I didn't experience any of that. I was a medevac. They flew me. I got wounded in Vietnam. Well, I got wounded twice. First time they medevaced me to Kamzama, Japan. From there, I got better. They sent me from there to Korea. From Korea, I got better. They sent me back into Vietnam. We was talking about the stuff that will get you taken back to Vietnam. That little Ranger tab there sent me back into Vietnam. The second time I got wounded, I got too close to some napalm. He medevaced me out to 44th Field Hospital. The next day, they packed me down in a metal thing that looked like a casket with ice. They flew me back to Kamzama, Japan. Stayed there for about 4.5, 5 months. Getting a lot of morphine. And a Japanese doctor came to me and said, Sergeant, you're getting a lot of morphine. Now, you know, you don't want to become addicted. He said, but if you do, the United States government's going to provide it for you. He said, but you don't want to do that. He said, here's a couple things we can do. We can slowly take you off of it, or you can cold turkey. I said, well, let's cold turkey. The pain was so bad that when the corpsman came down to change my bandages every morning, everybody that was ambulatory got up and left. That's how bad the pain was. Because part of the healing process was not to wet the bandages down, but was to pull them off so all the dead skin and everything could come with it.
Indeed.
And I got like 34% of my body burned, first, second, and third degree burns. And the reason I didn't experience that homecoming mess was because they medevaced me from Kamzama to Walter Reed Army Hospital. So I didn't experience no airport flat stuff going on, or none of that.
See, I came home in December '71. I went to Vietnam with my, in khaki, short sleeves, lightweight, took a field jacket, and got on the plane and got off, and they basically said, those of you staying in the Army this way, those of you ETSing this way. And that was in the morning, and they gave, when you were done, you went to your final pay stage, they paid you any money that they owed you, you gave them your ID card, and they gave you 2 travel vouchers. Taxi ride to the bus station, the train station, or the airport, and they gave you a voucher for a ticket. So walk into the airport, there were protesters there, there were 5 of us in the cab, but we just kind of ignored them. It was a rainy, cold day. It was kind of nice. The strange thing is we could understand people talking. You could actually understand conversations. So in those days, it was different. There were room in the airline, the flights weren't crowded, so you could walk up to a ticket counter and say, I need a flight this evening to Philadelphia, and they'd write you a ticket. You didn't have to make reservations 3 months in advance. So I got a ticket, sitting in the airport, listening to people's conversations, got on the plane. I got on about last, and I found there was 3 seats, no one in them. I flopped down in the window seat, and I don't know where I was somewhere else. And I suddenly noticed that the people behind me, the people in front of me, people next to the other row, all got up and moved. So I had the entire center of the plane to myself for the flight home.
I got out, and my wife then at the time went home early because she was pregnant at the time. And I went and spent the last week with a friend of mine in the Air Force. And me and my dog drove home. I picked up a hitchhiker on the way. And he rode with me for maybe 100 miles. Then the baby killer shit started. Me and the dog put him on. I had to release the dog up and get him out of my car. When he started the baby killer stuff, so I think maybe you're going to stop at the next crossroads. You're going to get the hell out of my car. Or the dog is going to have an early breakfast. Yep, times change. Here's our next volunteer.
There's a question somewhere.
Right in the front.
Right here.
Got to stand up. Hi, I just wanted to ask, what are your thoughts about the current gun laws? Since you guys did talk about it. The current gun laws, can you guys hear me? Yeah.
Current gun laws.
Current gun laws.
Current gun laws.
Me, I think everybody have the right to bear arms, but I think this country have just went crazy, because now you can go online and make up a gun. Me myself, I think every one of these young brothers or whoever out there want a gun, you want to fire somebody, join the military. We'll train you how to shoot, but you're gonna get shot back at, and then I think they'll stop all this. Or you get in trouble, you want to shoot, we'll send you where you can go shoot all you want, but you're getting shot back at. And I guarantee you, when they get back, they won't want to touch a gun. That's the way I feel about it.
Personally, I have nothing, it's the 14th Amendment, right?
Yes.
I have nothing
Right to
with
bear
the 14th Amendment. What bothers me are young yahoos with 2 hours of training at the range carrying a semi-automatic assault weapon with 30 rounds. That's what scares me. I mean, do you really need that much firepower walking down the streets? I mean, carry your Glock, carry your 45, I don't care. But 30 rounds in a magazine just scares me. That's a problem.
And it's not a problem for him, it's a problem for you.
I don't have no issues with the right to bear arms.
I don't.
It's the type of arms that you are allowed to bear. That weapon is not designed for hunting. The armament, when I went in the military, we was carrying M1s. We finally switched off to AR-15s. The armament for the AR-15 is manufactured so when it enters your body and hits cartilage or bone, it turns 90 degrees to do more damage in your body. That's what those bullets are about, with those assault weapons like that. And you don't need them to hunt with. So I got this. Matter of fact, I don't own a weapon, but my wife owns 2. She owns 2 Glocks. She's trained. She has a trainer up in Cranberry, an instructor that she goes to, and she knows how to clean the weapon, disassemble the weapon, load the weapon, carry the weapon. So I don't carry one because I'm going to use it. Because my mindset is this: I don't pull out a weapon to posture. I'll pull it out to kill. I'm not pulling out my weapon to say, if you don't, when it comes out of my shoulder holster or my hip holster, when it clears that holster, it's firing. And I got a real bad temper. And I got some things that I don't negotiate about. If you do something to me, we could sit down and talk about it. When you mess with my wife, I don't negotiate. I don't not negotiate when it comes to my wife.
Wife and kids.
My wife and my kids. I don't, my family, my grandkids.
Yeah, no talking.
So you know you're wrong when you cross that line. So that's for one reason I don't carry a weapon.
Hi, first I wanted to say thank you so much. It's an honor, like, hearing all of your guys' experience, and it's a great privilege to be able to listen to you. But I had a question. I'm in Dr. Rod's class, and I've seen a few of you actually speak in our class, but I want to know how to approach a veteran, like my uncle, he's a Vietnam veteran, and he does not talk about it at all and refuses to speak on his experience. And how would you approach somebody, like a loved one, about, sharing their experience if they're willing? Or
Well, I used to tell guys during treatment that we say that maybe they don't know how to approach you. The question is not always on your plate. Sometimes it's on the veteran's plate. So what you might want to say to them, if you ever want to talk about Vietnam, I'm open. And you just leave it at that, because
Ask him would he like to come to one of
you haven't invited him to the, you haven't. Yeah, I finished this, yeah. You have invited him to the table, so now he knows he's welcome to open up about it.
And you can do like my niece them asked me, when I used to talk, Uncle Rand, I seen this on the Vietnam movie. Did this really happen? And, that could be a starting point. Well, no, that's false. And then you can say, well, what really happened? And he might open up that way.
Get you.
Right there.
Got one over there.
Hi, I just want to thank you for your service and thank you for being here today. I was curious because you guys mentioned it earlier, kind of about the rhetoric that was kind of like pushed and that you had to adopt of like the dehumanizing the enemy and stuff. How did you deal with the shift in perspective once you guys came home and like starting to see the enemy as like human again, basically?
I personally had no problem with the enemy being killed. The more the better. I was in the Marine Corps Infantry Company. We were aggressive, and the idea was to let their mothers cry for them. Coming home, I had no, honestly, I hate to say it, I had no feelings. It was, when the time I got home, the war was still going on. I ended up marrying my longtime girlfriend. I had my firstborn, the war was still going on. I was married. I had my secondborn, the war was still going on. So life had went on with me. I had moved on from the Vietnam thing. I didn't have the bad experiences in my dreams and everything that a lot of these guys had with the PTSD. It must be a character flaw or something, but it's I moved on. Work, life, mortgage, babies.
Your buddy buying a bar.
He helped me through it.
With me, being a preacher's son, and when I went over it, I realized, that I have no right to take a person's life. And then I gave my life to Christ, and then I realized they are human just like we are. And I looked at it as, because you're not the only person asked me, it was a job that I was assigned to do. Just like they had a job. But we went to their land. And I think if they came to our land, we would have did the same as they was doing, defending their land. Until the day I still ask myself sometimes, why did I go over there? But it was a job, just like going to a 9 to 5. Your boss said go, you go. And that's what it was.
The other option was go to jail.
Yep, that or you go to prison.
As a medic, I treated as many of the enemy and as many of the citizens of wherever I was. So I didn't have time to feel a lot of remorse or joy about it. I knew that if in fact I was threatened or any of my people were threatened, that we were going to return the favor, without a doubt. But everybody has a different, you have a different perspective depending on what it is you do. And we all knew that the people that we treated this evening could very well be the ones that were shooting at us. You know, you're somewhere else. You're in somebody else's
You're in their backyard.
vacuum. You know, you're in somebody else's backyard. You know, they know where all the hiding holes are, and they know who you are. So, I mean, there ain't a whole hell of a lot you can do about it at that point. You just gotta keep doing what you're doing.
Well, for me, while I was there, I didn't think about one way or the other. But now that years have passed, and every waking moment, I try to become a better human being every day. And to do that, I have learned to love all humanity, embrace God's creation, because even the ignorant has a story to tell. And I'm not mad at them. They got up and went to work today every day like we did. And I got too much still left on my plate. I have 2 failed marriages. I have still have some adult children I'm kind of connect with. They don't appear to want to walk in the door, but the door is still open as long as I'm here. So there's a lot of stuff left on my plate. But I'm just thankful for every moment. I'm not asking God for nothing and being thankful for everything.
I advise anybody that has issues with things that you did or you do is to find something that replaces it. You know, for me, it was softball. I mean, I played for a long time, and I've been an umpire, girls softball, for 50 years, and wouldn't think of giving it up. You got to have something to replace whatever you lost. Like my man over here, he needs to go to sleep.
And I think we have time for maybe one more question. So,
thank you. My name's Garrett Cooper. I'm the chair of the Robert M. Rodriguez Fund. And I just wanted to quickly thank Duquesne University, Dr. John Mitchum, and the various other folks, staff members at Duquesne, for helping put on this event. So every year, it's wonderful to see so many students turn out. And I hope you enjoyed the symposium, much like myself. This is my 5th time seeing it. It's always amazing. My question for you gentlemen, you mentioned about this being a job. And I think, we've all, whether you're a college student, maybe you've had a summer internship, a job of some sort, those of us that are out there a little older, right, and we've been in the workforce. So at a job, right, you do your job, and hopefully you do it well, and that of your peers, and then the company does well, right, or the organization does well, or so forth. There was something mentioned in the video where one of the vets said, you know what, it's seldom that we lost a battle, but overall we lost the war. Did you all have, when you were in country, did you all have those conversations with each other? Maybe it was a daily basis, maybe it was one of those things that you'd come back in, right, from going out and on tour. Would you have a discussion about how we, as Americans, were doing in Vietnam, and whether or not we were succeeding in terms of our goal of, helping the South Vietnamese, right, remain, independent or have a democratic government? Thank you.
Now, that's not a question. That's a question for all of us. But it's not a question that I'm going to ask him or him. All I want to do is get to tomorrow. Period. Get to tomorrow. Do what you got to do. Try to get through and get the hell out of here.
The idea is, we all belong to a team. I had a 4-man fire team. Greg had a team in it's your team. That's who you're worried about. It's, because things happen. And I mean, I had a fire team at the end that in like 90 days, one of us was in Philadelphia Naval Hospital, one of us was in a hospital in Fairbanks, and two of them were killed in action. Things change, but it's your team. That's the focus. Your team. That's your guys. You know what I mean? That's who has your back, and you end up learning about their families, and it's a team. I mean, but it always changes because teams, you rotate from someone gets wounded bad enough where they left, there's a difference when, like I end up getting 3 Purple Hearts, and there's a difference between being hurt and injured, if you know what I mean. My Purple Hearts were, I got hurt, but I wasn't incapacitated. That's that's one of the deals. Greg, same deal. He was, that's you get hit, you get shrapnel shot or whatever. But it's not. You're not leaving country. They're keeping you if they can. And honestly, if you did leave, I've heard a lot of guys that left because I was in Philadelphia Naval Hospital for a year, and they felt guilty. They felt guilty that they left their platoon, they left their squad, they left their fire team, that they had left, because it's just human. It's part of the team.
I can answer your question by saying I measured mine by, we cleared the checkpoint, 42 of us, and 42 of us came back through. We won. But there's days that, I remember clearing the checkpoint one time with 42, including myself, only 41 came back. But the good news is that I was the one that didn't come back. No one else got injured. I tripped a booby trap and got medevac. But that was still a winning day for me because I'm the one that got wounded, no one else. So I won that day too.
When you're in country, if you ever want to know if someone is a veteran, ask them when they deroast. If they look at you and say, huh? They're not a veteran. Deroast stands for date eligible return from overseas. And so, and every Vietnam vet knows that. They know when they deroast. And about the only thing on your mind was how many days you had to go to deroast and what do I have to do to get there? I don't know about you guys, but I had a deroast calendar. Every morning, it was like, 32 days on a wake up. You didn't count the day that you were there. That was the way you flew out. And first thing you did, you wake up, okay, and you walk over and you mark off one day on your deroast. And the calendars were interesting. The first 200 days were real tiny. You could color and color and color, and it wouldn't make up the thing. And as you got closer to your deroast date, the spaces got bigger. And so it was all psychological to get you there. But we didn't care about the politics. We just wanted to make sure we got home.
See, I didn't do a zero calendar because I was a career soldier. I was in the military for 20 years. I knew at some point when I decided I was going to be in the military for 20 years, based on the history of this country, I was going to end up in combat.
Again.
And again, few problems. We had guys in Vietnam that was in Korea, and ended up in Vietnam, and eventually they stayed in long enough they might end up in Afghanistan. When you choose to give your 20 years of your life to your country, and you look at its history, somewhere and based on your military occupational status, your MOS, if it's a combat MOS, you're going to end up in combat. More than once, probably.
And that includes everybody who ends in 1-1.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Because your primary MOS might be a cook, but your secondary MOS might be a cook, but your primary MOS is a 1-1B4P. That's a rifleman. That's your primary MOS. And remember, DOD stands for the Department of Defense, not Mediterranean cruisers.
You know, another thing, like you said, when you get the big checkpoints, your team, if they going out for a maneuver or something, they say, look, you stay in the back, because you want him to go home. He's short. He's getting ready to go. You don't want nothing to happen to him. You want him to go home because one day your turn coming up.
Yeah, when you clear the checkpoint, you put the short timers where they can be safe.
Yeah, where they can be in the safe.
Where they can be in a safer position.
Yes, you don't want nothing to happen to you. You want you to go home.
Yeah.
And that's just teamwork. It's just teamwork.
I do not want to use my last cigarette of morphine on you.
And the thing about you miss your family, but you gain a family. Because these guys are your brothers. And you know, they got your life in your hand. Each one of us hold our life, each of our lives in our hand. One man down, that's less bullets going out. That's just the bottom line.
I want to once again, not that it's ending, I don't know when, but I want to thank Bob for my healing process, because without Bob, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be nowhere near where I'm at in my healing process. Because when I was getting dressed, my wife says, you're going to your most important therapy session of the year. Yes. Now, because this is therapy for me. Now, when I get back home, we'll have a little chit-chat for me to debrief it a little bit, because she's going to be concerned, are you going to stand up in the bed tonight and raise that damn shit thing? No, baby, we're good with that. But I always get a cup of coffee, and we have a little debriefing thing, so I can debrief with her, but all the glory to Bob. I love him for it. I love him.
This is the commercial part of the book. There's an organization in Pittsburgh, it's been around since 2008, it's called the Veterans Breakfast Club. It's run by a gentleman named Todd T. Pastino, and they ask you for $5 a month, but they don't charge you, and you can be a member for free. And the basic idea is to get veterans together and to tell stories, and you don't have to be a veteran. We like to see non-veterans, we like to see young people show up to ask questions, because answering those questions helps us. I've got some cards up here if you'd like to pick one up. If you don't want to, it's just veteransbreakfastclub.com. And check it out, because these stories are important. And for the younger veterans, give us a call, please.
Well, about the stories, there's 3 sides to Vietnam. There's the government side, there's the media side, and there's the real side.
Okay, can I hear? Okay, there we go. There's we heard a lot of thanks early, but I think one man who did not get enough thanks was Dr. John Mitchum, head of our history department. He has been a tremendous advocate of the Vietnam Symposium ever since I've been here. And with John, we can continue to sustain it. So, John, I thank you deeply. And also to our men up here, our panelists. You heard it. You said it. This is the real story. You are living pieces of history. And you shared that with us tonight. And that's a very noble cause. So I'd like to thank all of our panelists again with a round of applause. Great. Thank you. Thank you very much. That ends the 5th Vietnam Symposium here at Duquesne University, and hopefully we'll be back next year. Okay, see you then.